Okay, we're about to begin the live read here in a second. Just adjusting my microphone. There we go. So, welcome to another night of reading the Quentin Tarantino Cinema Speculation. We are trucking through it. Is that the right term? We are getting through it. I really like the book. This one's going to be semi short of a chapter, Cinema Speculation. What if Brian De Palma directed Taxi Driver instead of Martin Scorsese? Well, that should be interesting. So we're just going to wait for a second, wait for people to join us, or at least Rodolfo. So just going to, well, there you are. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm here. We're running a bit late. I couldn't find the remote to my TV. It took me a minute to find it. I had to mute. I had to pause it for a second. But I'll start here in a second. I just want to see if anybody else shows up and give it another 20 seconds or so. Well, we're getting through it all right. Not much is left in the book. So, freaking love this book, I'll tell you that much. It's going to go in my favorite pile of books. Okay, here we go. I believe that's Steve McQueen, and I'm not sure if that's Peckinpah. I don't know what he looks like, or I'm not even sure who that is, to be honest. I'm assuming it's a director. I'm assuming this is Bullet, but I'm not too sure, to be honest. Might be. I don't know. I'm not too read up on the Steve McQueen movies. Was he in Getaway? Because it looks like he's in the Getaway outfit. If I got that correctly, I don't know if I did. Okay. Cinema speculation. What if Brian De Palma directed Taxi Driver instead of Martin Scorsese? Brian De Palma introduced me to Paul Schrader. We made a pilgrimage out to see Manny Farber, the critic, in San Diego. I wanted Paul to do a script of The Gambler by Diovosky. I don't know how to say that for me. But Brian took Paul out for dinner, and they contrived it so I couldn't find them. By the time I tracked them down, 3 hours later, they cooked up Obsession. But Brian told me that Paul had a script, Taxi Driver, that he didn't want to do or couldn't do it at the time, and wondered if I'd be interested in reading it. So I read it, and my friend Sandy Wintrobe read it, and she said it was fantastic. We agreed that this was the kind of picture we should be making. Martin Scorsese on Scorsese. Yes, that's right. Brian De Palma was the actual first of the movie brats to read Paul Schrader's screenplay and contemplated directing it. Story goes Brian De Palma and Paul Schrader became friendly associates when Schrader, critic at the Times, wrote a good review for De Palma's new film Sisters, leading to critic Schrader interviewing the young filmmaker for his newspaper. During the interview, the two men continued to go on well, with Schrader revealing to De Palma that he plays chess. Since De Palma does too, they proceeded to play chess, which, for these two career strategists, to start their relationship battling it out over a chessboard is so metaphorically perfect as to be suspect as legend building public relations. While trying to capture the other man's bishop, Schrader just happens to mention he's written a screenplay. Oh no, not another one, De Palma groans. Schrader calms him down. I'm just saying, since we're talking, I wrote a script once. The script he was referring to was the first draft of Taxi Driver, and despite De Palma rolling his eyes at the mention of this film critic's screenplay, he eventually did read it, and recognizing the material as a genuine piece of work, was tempted to do it himself. In later years, he shrugged it off as, "I just thought it was better suited for Marty." But sometimes he admits the reason he didn't do it, he didn't think it was commercial enough. Admittedly, that's rather depressing reason. It wasn't commercial enough, so it was commercial enough for Columbia Pictures, and it was commercial enough for the original director, Robert Mulligan, and it was commercial enough for Mulligan's original leading man, Jeff Bridges. And then after winning, Ellen Burstyn the Academy Award for Best Actress, it's commercial enough for Martin Scorsese. And after winning the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, it's commercial enough for Robert De Niro, but it wasn't commercial enough for Brian De Palma. In all fairness to the young De Palma of that era, a movie that would put asses in seats is what Brian was looking for. His brand new 20th Century Fox rock and roll musical extravaganza, Phantom of the Paradise, was playing in New York's to empty auditoriums. He didn't want that feeling of watching another of his movies being indifferently projected on the screen in a sparsely populated auditorium. So the next film out of the gate should be a hit. And while it's clear he considered making Taxi Driver, he ultimately decided to enlist Schrader to write with him a vertical retrieved title Obsession that would further play into De Palma's the new Hitchcock personality. So the choice for De Palma in 1976 isn't between Taxi Driver and Carrie. It's Taxi Driver and Obsession. Brian De Palma does Taxi Driver in 1976 instead of Obsession, and still does Carrie later that year. Or he does both Obsession and Carrie, but he holds on to the script of Taxi Driver and does it after Carrie in 1977 instead of The Fury. But just because Brian De Palma was commercially motivated doesn't mean he was prescient. It was Taxi Driver that ended up connecting with audiences, and it was his slow, lush obsession that audiences ignored. Now, Obsession isn't a bad movie, just a bit of a dreary one, and Cliff Robertson's lead performance is extremely unappealing, especially for a movie about a doomed love story. Robertson is about as sexy as Grandpa's big toe, but in all fairness, Genevieve Bajol's tremendous performance is far more memorable than Cliff Robertson's creepiness, and she's at the center of, up to that time, uh, Be Black Baby aside, the finest De Palma cinematic set piece of his filmography. The sequence where Bajol, in a close up, reverts back to a 7-year-old little girl and remembers what actually happened the night of the kidnapping. Despite all my misgivings about Obsession, Robertson's lead performance, the film's lack of humor, and the doomed love story at its center kind of works, as does the impact of Vilmos Zsigmond's dreamy floaty camera and Bernard Herrmann's lushy pounding score. So by the time you reach the climax at the airport, as Herrmann's score seems to hurl the lead characters, Robertson and Bajol, towards each other, you could be legitimately on the edge of your seat. Also, Schrader's melodramatic doomed love story, despite lacking common sense, also sort of works in a preposterous, magnificent obsession kind of way. It's unmistakably a Brian De Palma movie, but due to its complete absence of humor, it's kind of a bad Brian De Palma movie. All in all, I wish De Palma had written the film himself. For a filmmaker who didn't start out as a screenwriter, De Palma was a pretty good screenwriter. At least he knew how to write Brian De Palma movies better than Paul Schrader. It's a little funny, peculiar that De Palma found Schrader's script for Taxi Driver initially uncommercial because the commercial niche that Columbia Pictures later had no trouble exploiting was as a movie in the vein of Death Wish. The trailer suggested Death Wish with an even more seriously disturbed dude at the center. The trailer decidedly does not announce itself as this is a story of a dude with a fucked up head. Instead, it paints a picture of a lone man in the crowd rising up to be heard who's had enough. Like Billy Jack, like Joe Don Baker, like Mr. Majestique. Since Columbia Pictures did such an effective job selling Taxi Driver as a Death Wish style vigilante film, it's curious the aspect didn't occur to De Palma after his first read, especially since I can see De Palma right after Sisters doing a remarkable job on a film like Death Wish. That's the kind of commercial gig Brian was on the hunt for, and he found when he read Carrie. However, once Marty read Schrader's material, that was it. Marty once told Paul, When Brian De Palma gave me a copy of Taxi Driver and introduced us, I almost felt I wrote it myself. Not that I could write that way, but I felt everything. I was burning inside my fucking skin. I had to make it. But it's still interesting to contemplate how close we came to Brian De Palma's directed Taxi Driver and exactly how that movie might have been different. I mean, it would have been based on the same screenplay. How different could it have been? I suspect mighty different. In fact, if the film's original director, Richard Summer 42 Mulligan, had shot Schrader's screenplay with Jeff Bridges playing Travis, I think that version would have been closer to Scorsese's version than De Palma's telling of the same story. In 1978, Richard Mulligan would do his version of a Scorsese movie when he adapted Richard Price's second novel, Blood Brothers. The main difference I see between a Scorsese directed version of Schrader's screenplay and a De Palma directed version would be the matter of point of view. I think it's entirely doubtful De Palma would have emphasized with Travis Bickle the way Schrader does and the way Scorsese and De Niro did. With the film Martin Scorsese made, when you watch Taxi Driver, you become Travis Bickle. Regardless of whether or not you empathize or sympathize with the rituals of Travis's existence, you observe him, and in observing them, you come to understand them. And when you understand this lonely man, he stops being a monster, if he ever was one to begin with. Scorsese, Schrader, and De Niro make you witness a man from the man's perspective. I'd speculate when Brian De Palma first read Schrader's manuscript, he didn't see it as the first person diary dream that Schrader intended. I bet De Palma's first reaction would have been along the lines of, oh, great, this can be my repulsion. I do believe that De Palma would have observed Travis the way Polanski observes Catherine Deneuve in Repulsion. A De Palma Taxi Driver wouldn't be linked with Death Wish. De Palma's Taxi Driver wouldn't have been a first person character study disguised as a vigilante thriller. Nobody's going to misinterpret De Palma's Travis as heroic. But Brian De Palma's Taxi Driver wouldn't have been just a thriller. It would have been a political thriller, kind of what Blowout ended up being. De Palma would have focused on the story's political assassination element. Travis Bickle's story would have been how some lonely becomes a political assassin. From Travis's place of displacement inside of society to getting the big idea to whack out Palantine to every little thing he does along the way, leading to the assassination attempt by Bickle in full Mohawk glory at the outdoor rally. As opposed to the big clumsy fiasco that Scorsese stages, I see Brian shooting it, like the prom sequence in Carrie as one of his grand slow motion ballets, an action set piece of Bickle's failed attempt scored by Bernard Herrmann, which would have no doubt been an extremely different score than the minimalist car noise asshole with a sex score Herrmann pawned off on Scorsese. And since Taxi Driver is the movie he would have done before he shot Carrie, you need not do anything but watch the whole Carrie prom sequence to see how De Palma would have orchestrated the assassination attempt scene in Taxi Driver. What's the bucket of pig blood scene but an assassination scene? Carrie White and Tommy Ross win an election, king and queen of the prom. The victorious candidates are brought on stage where they're applauded by their cheering constituency. However, among all this cheering, there's an individual with an imagined grudge against the female candidate. Nancy Allen's blonde haired, red lipped gloss, Chris Hargensen, whose desire is to assassinate the candidate in front of her constituency at the very moment of her big triumph. That filled to the brim bucket of pig blood, falling with its full weight onto Carrie White's face, is Jackie getting JFK's brains blown in her face. The assassin Chris enlists a like-minded army of volunteers to help her pull off this conspiracy, especially second in command evil girl Norma, played by baseball cap wearing, pigtail sporting PJ Souls, as well as a group of guys, John Travolta's Billy Nolan and Norma's boyfriend Freddie, played by Michael Talbot, who are duped and manipulated by the assassins into assisting. including rigging the entire election so the assassins can make sure candidates Carrie and Tommy will win. Even smiling Sue Snell, Amy Irving, Carrie's secret campaign manager, standing with yet apart from the cheering crowd, seems pleased with her media creation. In De Palma's Taxi Driver, I can see Sybil Shepherd's bestie, if made after Carrie, a great part for either Nancy Allen or Amy Irving, being enlarged to particularly co-lead status. I wouldn't be surprised if Schrader and Scorsese's imperative to not have any scene in the movie, not from Travis's perspective, wasn't monkeyed with by De Palma in order to feature a few scenes from Bestie's perspective. Maybe it's even Bestie who figures out Travis's plan beforehand, and it's because of her that his assassination attempt is thwarted. I'm not suggesting any of these hackneyed ideas involving Betsy would be an improvement on the film Scorsese made, but the same movie done in a more Hitchcockian manner, I can see those changes woven into the scenario. The other change from a De Palma version and the Scorsese version would have been the whole Searchers angle. When Paul Schrader writes his thematic Searchers remake, then looks out and lands Scorsese as Helmer, he doesn't just land an interpreter, but a co conspirator. Jesus Christ, Marty even features a clip from the fucking Searchers and Main Streets. As Schrader tells Marty about the duality of Ethan Edwards and Travis Bickle, Scorsese doesn't need subtitles. He tells Paul the Comanche Buffalo story. I think it's fairly safe to assume that De Palma was not as enamored with either John Ford or the Searchers as Scorsese was, and it's doubtful that Brian would have leaned into the similarities between the films as heavily as Marty did. I can hear him telling Schrader, after he's heard Paul refer to the Ford epic one time too many, look, Paul, maybe the script you wrote was based on the Searchers, but the movie I'm going to make is going to be Repulsion. Next big question. If Brian De Palma shot Taxi Driver, who would have played Travis Bickle? And if you just jump to Robert De Niro because of two men's past association, not so fast. Despite Brian and Robert starting their careers off together, they wouldn't work with each other again till The Untouchables in the 80s. I always assumed the two men must have had a falling out, but recently asked Mr. De Niro about working with Mr. De Palma in the times of Greetings and Hi Mom, and the actor remembered the director fondly. It was always good to work with Brian. He was a great audience, and he knew what he wanted. Then I asked, was there any falling out between the two men? And De Niro categorically denied any bad blood between them. No, he explained, when the two of us were in town during the 70s, we'd get together and share a coffee and catch up. I asked how come they didn't work more together, and Mr. De Niro said, well, Brian became a pretty big director then. He was doing his stuff and I was doing mine. And it's true. If you think about the movies De Palma did in the 70s, none of them are conspicuous by De Niro's absence. It's not until Jack Terry in Blowout that a role right for De Niro presented itself. But what about Taxi Driver? Well, you have to remember, Robert De Niro wasn't attached to Taxi Driver. The film was already set up at Columbia Pictures with Jeff Bridges in the lead role, and the Phillipses and Tony Bill attached as producers. Scorsese wanted De Niro for the role, but the studios didn't think he was a big enough star yet. But he was playing the young Vito Corleone in Francis Ford Coppola's upcoming sequel to The Godfather. So according to Schrader, they decided not to shoot it with Jeff Bridges, which meant saying adios to superstar producer Tony Bill, and wait for The Godfather Part 2 to come out and hopefully make De Niro a bigger name. Well, that worked. Robert De Niro won the Best Supporting Actor Academy Award that year for his role as Vito Corleone. But then Scorsese had another problem. De Niro had signed on to be one of the two leads in Bernardo Bertolucci's Italian epic 1900. And now Marty had to sit on his hands and wait seemingly fucking forever for Bertolucci to finish his magnum opus. That's how convinced Marty and Paul were that Robert was the right actor to play Travis. However, I can see Brian De Palma being very happy with the greenlit film at Columbia Pictures produced by the three producers of The Sting and starring Jeff Bridges. I don't see De Palma waiting a year for Bobby, and even if Bridges dropped out, I can see Jan Michael Vincent proving an effective Travis Bickle for De Palma. But now comes the 64, what is it? 6,400,000. I think it's a mistake. There's four zeros there and the commas over there. Dollar question. How about changing sports race from black to white? I know I'm making a big deal out of this because to me, it's a very big deal. The entire debate between social responsibility, social compromise, and integrity can be boiled down to this one decision. As I've stated before, I don't think Scorsese considered the changing of the character's race as that big of a deal, and it does appear the producers and the studio properly intimidated the director with their worst case scenarios of writing black audiences. And as I also mentioned, Scorsese was looking for a good role for Harvey Keitel anyway. But Brian De Palma wouldn't be breaking his neck to get Harvey Keitel in the movie. Would he have faced the same pressures brought to bear on Martin Scorsese? Undoubtedly. Yet, with the less sympathetic and more repulsion like Travis Bickle, events might have played out differently. The guy's a fucking lunatic. A lunatic can kill anybody. Also, it must be said, the director who brought you Be Black Baby felt the script should stay as it was written. I'm pretty positive De Palma would have been more successful. Pretty interesting. We found a mistake in Tarantino's book. That's pretty funny. I don't know. I don't know. Does some people write numbers like that? I mean, I've never seen it written out like that. Usually the comma goes right after the third zero right there. Interesting. Did he mean $64,000 question? Is that even a saying? That's kind of that's weird. That's got me questioning the whole thing. Yeah, and sometimes he uses like big words that seem so unnecessary in the book. Like I don't even think he uses big words in his normal day vocabulary. If he does, it takes him like forever to think about it. But I still love the book. I still love the book. So that's that. Kind of a short chapter there. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to take a break from reading, and then we'll pick up Monday. I may just do a regular hangout live session on tomorrow. But yeah, tomorrow is Rolling Thunder. Pretty pretty sizable chapter. So yeah, it's a pretty big chapter. So yeah, taking a break tomorrow. Pick up on Monday. Yeah, that was short, huh? It seemed a little longer when I thumbed through the pages, but yeah, it was short. Um, yeah, I'll take a little break tomorrow. Kind of use Sunday as my day off from reading, and I'm actually writing a script right now. I'm on page 30, and I'm hoping to finish it before March. Should be interesting. The whole screenplay is it's a collection of vignettes that are 10 minutes long each. So that's what I'm working on right now. Okay, yeah, Rolling Thunder. You can watch it on free on what is it? Tubi? Yeah, Tubi. So if you want to watch the movie before we read it, you can do that. It's got its moments. It's got its like slow bits, but not too far off from I would say even Taxi Driver. I mean, Taxi Driver has its slow bits building up, right? But there is a lot more tension in Taxi Driver, whereas in Thunder it takes a minute to play out. But there's some really good scenes. It's that are pretty violent and entertaining. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. Rolling Thunder, yeah, Rolling Thunder. We'll leave it at that and pick it up to Monday. Monday, same time, 9 p.m. Central, the huge. And I don't know how much further. So this will be section 13. Yeah, we'll probably finish the book by Friday or so. Because there's only, I don't know, I want to say 5 more sections left in the book, just about. So, yeah, yeah, look at this. Look at this big ass book we're about to finish. I'm gonna feel accomplished for sure. All right. Well, yeah, pretty short. Um, so yeah, have a good night, Rodolfo, and we'll catch up on Monday with the book. Like I said, I'll probably, I mean, yeah, Monday, Sunday, I'll probably just go live and hang out, so we can just kind of joke around, whatever, do that, do that sort of thing. But okay, everybody have a good night. Be seeing you soon.